In the middle of Tech Plaza, white billionaire Clara Wright is rushing to a shareholders meeting when her $4 million supercar suddenly smokes and stalls in front of thousands of cameras. Security panics. The crowd continues filming. No one dares to move, except a homeless black man in a tattered coat steps forward and says, "I can fix it." Clara scoffs. The crowd laughs until the smoke turns deadly and the truth is revealed. The man she despises is the only one who can save the empire she built. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The engine screamed before it died. A streak of blue-gray smoke curled out from beneath the hood of the Quantum Apex, cutting through the noise of Tech Plaza like a flare over a battlefield. Heads turned, cameras rose, and at the center of it all, Clara Wright, tech billionaire founder of Nexus Innovations, stood beside her $4.2 million masterpiece, as if watching her reputation melt into vapor. "No, I don't care what it costs. Get a team here now." She barked into her phone, her voice trembling under its polished edge. The assistant on the other end said something about 2 hours. 2 hours, she snapped. "I have investors flying in less than that." She ended the call with a jab that made her reflection in the car door shake. For Clara, control was everything. Precision was her brand. And now, under the glare of drones and gossiping onlookers, she was losing both. Then a voice came from somewhere behind the smoke, steady low, careful. "Ma'am, your secondary quantum thrust loop has a microfracture. That's why you're seeing the blue-gray exhaust." The words were too calm for the chaos around her. Clara turned sharply. A man stood several feet away, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a faded jacket that had once been navy, and now was just tired. A grocery bag hung from his arm. His beard was uneven, his eyes measured. He didn't move closer. He looked like someone who had learned the cost of stepping forward too soon. "Don't touch my car." Clara snapped before he could say another word, the heat of embarrassment twisting her voice into something sharper than anger. The man froze where he stood, palms raised slightly. He didn't argue, he didn't apologize. He just looked at the car, then back at her, calm in a way that only came from being humiliated too many times to react anymore. Around them, phones began to film. Clara felt their lenses more than she saw them, each one documenting the moment the unbreakable Clara Wright lost control. "Who are you?" she demanded, tone dripping with contempt. "What are you even doing here?" The man's gaze didn't waver. "Trying to help," he said quietly. "If you keep running the diagnostics, the coolant will breach the tertiary chamber. You'll have a full system collapse in about 40 minutes. Clara scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping before she could stop it. "Oh, really? And I suppose you're an expert in multi-million-dollar quantum engines." Something like that, he said, and even in that noise, sirens, murmurs, the ticking clock of her meeting his voice carried. She didn't notice how specific he'd been, how his words fit the failure exactly. She only saw what everyone else saw, a homeless man standing too close to something expensive. "Security's on the way," she muttered almost to herself, turning her back to him, as if that would erase the problem. Marcus Johnson lowered his hands but didn't move. He had expected this reaction. It was the same look he'd seen 100 times since the day everything he'd built was taken away. He could still read the engine's rhythm in his head, still see the equations behind the sound. The Quantum Apex sputtered again, smoke thickening the same color he'd warned her about. He took one slow breath steady and practiced. She wouldn't listen now. But engines and people always reached a point where pride gave way to failure. And when that moment came between her anger and his restraint, the world seemed to pause, holding its breath for what would happen next. Long before Clara Wright's car filled the plaza with smoke, Marcus Johnson had already been there. He came to Tech Plaza most mornings, slipping quietly into the edges where no one cared enough to notice. The place pulsed with routine drones, overhead engines, warming people chasing time. It was noisy, but the noise made sense. Machines always did. That morning, he sat by the fountain, his grocery bag resting against his leg. Inside were the small constants of his life, a folded tarp, a screwdriver, a stack of hand-sketched diagrams, order among chaos. Then he heard it, the sound that pulled him back to who he used to be. A smooth electric hum slicing through the plaza air, flawless at first, until it faltered. Just a fraction. Just enough. He lifted his head. The Quantum Apex. Silver body precision curves, arrogance on wheels. There were only 7 in the world, and he'd helped design the heart beating inside that one. He He knew the flaw before the smoke appeared. The tone was wrong, strained, uneven, like a breath held too long. The car stopped. A thin ribbon of blue-gray rose from the hood, twisting upward in the light. Marcus felt it before he thought it. The weakness was in the secondary loop, the very one his old report had warned about. He stood, hesitated. Years of instinct told him not to get involved. People didn't want help from someone who looked like him. But the other instinct, the one to fix, was stronger. "I can really fix it," Marcus said. Clara froze. The sentence pulled her back from her own anger. "Excuse me." He didn't waver. "Your cooling loop has a hairline crack. It's bleeding coolant into the tertiary chamber. That's why you're seeing that specific blue-gray smoke. It's evaporating against the heat shield." She stared at him, half insulted, half curious. The crowd had gone quiet again. "And how long before your imaginary crack destroys my engine?" 40 minutes, he said simply. "Your diagnostics already warned you 45 minutes to irreversible failure. That was 5 minutes ago." Her expression flickered, only for a breath. But he saw it, the faint recognition of truth. She turned slightly, checking the dashboard's red flashing code, then forced a scoff. "You must have guessed that." "I don't guess," Marcus replied. "I designed the system this car was built on. That landed heavier than she expected." "You what?" "This Quantum Apex uses an upgraded version of Aerotech's cooling network," he continued, voice steady, technical, but clear. "Same alloy in the secondary loop. Same stress line. The one I flagged in Internal Memo XT 447. Her breath caught. XT 447, a code she'd seen once in old acquisition files buried deep. The number was like a ghost whisper, something buried in the acquisition files from Aerotech years ago. No one outside the company ever mentioned it. Marcus kept talking controlled factual. The fracture forms where the alloy shifts density at the junction between the secondary and tertiary chambers. It starts invisible, grows under pressure, then vents through the heat shield. That's your smoke. Clara's fingers tightened around her phone. "That's classified information," she said. "How do you—" He met her eyes. "Calm. Because I wrote it." The air thickened. The crowd pressed in closer. Somewhere behind them, the sound of heavy shoes cut through, the whispers, security guards weaving through the people, hands on their radios, eyes locked on Marcus. He noticed them instantly. The practiced movement, the way their shoulders squared as they approached. His stomach tightened, a familiar fear rising up his spine. He'd seen this scene too many times, good intentions mistaken for trouble. Clara caught the motion too, but didn't call them off. Her instincts told her to keep control, to keep distance. "Stay where you are," she said sharply as one of the guards stepped closer. Marcus lifted his hands, slightly palms open. "I'm not touching the car," he said. "I'm just telling you what's happening." "Ma'am, is this man bothering you?" one of the guards asked, already sizing him up. Clara hesitated. For a heartbeat, she didn't answer. Marcus exhaled slowly. The smoke was darker now, the hum inside the engine turning uneven, labored. He glanced at it, then at her. 39 minutes, he said quietly. "If we keep talking about me, you'll lose the car." The guard's hand hovered near his radio. Clara's gaze darted between Marcus, the engine, and the smoke twisting like a signal in the sunlight. And for the first time, uncertainty crept into her voice. "Wait," she said. "Just wait." Marcus stayed still, hands raised, eyes steady. Between the whisper of authority behind him and the dying heartbeat of the machine before him, he stood caught between fear and duty. One wrong move from being thrown out, one right word from being trusted. The clock on the dashboard kept ticking. The two security guards stepped closer, the sound of their boots cutting through the hum of the plaza. The crowd instinctively pulled back. The phone stayed high, and the air grew heavy with judgment. Clara folded her arms, keeping her voice cool. "You said you wrote it. XT 447. Marcus nodded once. "Marcus Johnson, former thermal systems consultant at Aerotech Industries. MIT graduate, triple major in engineering. 7 patents under my name." Clara's expression didn't move, and now he met her eyes. "Now I'm homeless." The word hit like a small explosion. A few people in the crowd whispered. One of the guards gave a short laugh. "Ma'am, you really shouldn't waste your time. These guys spin stories all the time, say whatever gets them close." The other nodded, lowering his voice. "He's from the street. No ID, no address. We've had people like him try to get near executives before. You can't trust them." Clara's jaw flexed. For a second, there was something in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe sympathy, but it was gone before it settled. "Run a background check," she said quietly. "Yes, ma'am." The taller guard stepped back and spoke into his radio. The remaining one stayed close to Clara, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "Don't move," he said. Marcus didn't. He'd learned that lesson long ago. He stood straight, calm, his hands visible. He spoke evenly, every word chosen. "If that fracture grows, it'll destroy your cooling core. $800,000 in parts, 11 weeks to replace. You'll miss your investor meeting today and lose the contract you're trying to keep." Clara's eyes snapped to him. "How do you know about that meeting?" "You said it yourself," Marcus replied. 2.5 hours. But this car has 38 minutes before the core collapses. The first guard came back phone in hand, his face tight. "Confirmed," he said. "No current address, no ID, no employer record for the last 3 years. Last job, Aerotech Industries. Terminated after internal investigation. No rehire, no standing credentials." The crowd murmured. The words hung in the air like a sentence being read aloud. Clara took a slow breath. "No ID." The guard shook his head. "Nothing official, ma'am. No driver's license, no tax record, no permanent residence. He's clean, but nothing connects. He's off the grid." The other guard added firmly, "People like this get aggressive fast. You should step away. Let us handle him." Marcus looked between them, his voice calm but steady. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to stop one." Clara's face hardened. "I'm sure you are," she said, "but I can't take that chance. Not today." He tried one last time, his tone low, professional. "You don't have time to wait for your team. If that loop ruptures, it'll eat the thrust bearings, overheat the core, and shut down every system. 37 minutes. You won't make the meeting. You'll lose the deal." The taller guard stepped closer. "Sir, that's enough." Clara exhaled the sound, clipped and final. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding," she said, voice polished but cold. "Please step back. My team will handle it from here." The guard's hand hovered near his radio. "Let's go." Marcus didn't move right away. He looked at her at the silver car behind her, the perfect dying machine, and said quietly, "You're making the same mistake they made at Aerotech, ignoring a crack because it came from the wrong voice." Clara's jaw tensed. "Step back, Mr. Johnson." He nodded once. No anger, just acceptance. 36 minutes, he said softly. He stepped away slow and controlled the guard, shadowing his every move until he reached the edge of the crowd. The plaza's noise came back in waves, murmurs, camera shutters, the low whine of the failing engine. Clara turned away, her phone already at her ear, her face set in determination and denial. Marcus stood alone on the curb, watching the smoke grow thicker, darker, heavier. He could still read the rhythm of the machine, still see the equation unfolding the way he had written it years ago. He knew how this story usually ended. In this industry, redemption expired fast, but scandal lasted forever. They had buried his name before. They would bury his warning now. But even stripped of everything address, title, respect, one thing remained untouched: the instinct to fix what others broke. He watched the quantum apex tremble, a masterpiece on the verge of ruin, and whispered to no one, 35 minutes left. The quantum apex coughed and shook the sound raw and uneven, like a wounded thing trying to breathe. The crowd had gone quiet, and even the drones above held still. Clara's fingers trembled as she pressed her phone to her ear. "Where is my backup team?" Her voice was tight-rushed. "I was told they'd be here by now." The line hissed before a voice came through, strained, apologetic. "We're sorry, ma'am. A critical malfunction in the new model has forced all available technical units to stay on site. Estimated arrival time 2 hours." Clara's pulse spiked. 2 hours? Her voice cracked slightly before she caught herself. That can't be right. A sharp electronic chime cut her off. The car's internal system blinked red. Critical warning, total system failure in 37 minutes. Clara froze. Her throat tightened as she read the number. Every digit matched exactly what Marcus had said. She turned toward him. He was still standing a few steps away, calm, motionless, the guards hovering near him like shadows waiting for a signal. "It says 37 minutes, she said, her voice unsteady. Marcus didn't move, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. "Then it's already started," he said softly. The taller guard took a step forward, hand resting on his radio. "Ma'am, we need to move you back. It's not safe to stay this close." Clara didn't respond. Her mind raced equations, deadlines, the meeting, the contract, all of it slipping. If the team's 2 hours away. Her voice trailed off as she looked back at the dashboard. Every alert on the display pulsed red. Marcus took a single step toward her, slow and deliberate. "Call Dr. Eleanor Chen," he said. Clara blinked. "Who, Dr. Eleanor Chen?" "Chief engineer at Space Tech Industries." His tone was steady but urgent. Tell her Marcus Johnson is here. She'll confirm who I am." Clara frowned, her hand tightening around the phone. "You can't expect me to do it," Marcus said, cutting her off. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. "You're running out of time." The firmness in his tone made her stop. For a moment her pride hesitated, then yielded to reason. She scrolled quickly through her contacts, her thumb trembling slightly as she found the number. The line rang twice. Dr. Chen speaking. Clara drew in a breath, straightening her posture. "Dr. Chen, this is Clara Wright from Nexus Innovations. I need confirmation about a former aerotech consultant named Marcus Johnson." There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. Marcus Johnson. Eleanor's voice shifted surprise first, then something deeper. "You're with him now?" Clara hesitated. "Yes, he's here. Claims he can fix a quantum apex." Eleanor cut in, her voice rising strong and clear. "He's not claiming anything. He can. Marcus Johnson is the most gifted thermal engineer I've ever worked with." Clara blinked. What Eleanor continued without slowing. "He designed the original cooling systems for half of our aerospace fleet. His work changed the entire industry." Clara's stomach tightened. "That's not possible." "No," Eleanor said. "That's history. His designs are still the foundation of what we build. Space tech wouldn't exist without him." The guards exchanged uneasy looks. Even the crowd behind them grew quieter, the murmurs fading. Eleanor's tone softened. "He disappeared 3 years, 4 months, and 22 days ago. We thought he was gone." "Tell me, Clara, what is he doing there?" Clara's voice caught. He's helping me." There was a brief pause, then Eleanor spoke again. Calm, decisive. "Then let him. Marcus Johnson is one of the few people alive qualified to handle that system. If your quantum apex is failing, he's your best and maybe your only chance. Let him fix it." The words hung heavy in the air. Even the guards lowered their hands from their radios. The plaza seemed to hold still. Then Eleanor's voice changed again, lower, now quieter, but full of regret. "And Clara, tell him, I'm sorry. We should have looked harder." The line clicked. Silence. Clara stood motionless, the phone still pressed to her ear. For a long second she couldn't breathe. Her mentor, the woman she had admired for years, had just called this stranger the most brilliant engineer alive. She turned slowly. Marcus stood exactly where he had been, calm, composed, his expression unreadable. His silence filled the distance between them. The taller guard broke it first. "Ma'am," his tone was cautious, now not commanding. Clara lowered the phone. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Stand down." The guards looked at each other, uncertain. She turned to them sharply. "That's an order." They stepped back. Clara faced Marcus again. The light from the car's dashboard reflected in her eyes. Her voice came out quiet, stripped of authority. "I misjudged you," she said. "I thought you were—" Marcus finished, for her voice steady. "Homeless." Clara's throat tightened. "Yes." She looked down, her hands trembling faintly. The phone hung loosely at her side. For the first time, Clara Wright, the woman who always had answers, had none. "I don't know how to apologize for that," she whispered. Marcus shook his head gently. "You don't have to. Just listen this time." She nodded slowly, unable to meet his eyes. Her voice was barely audible. "I will." The car gave a harsh rattle that made both of them flinch. The dashboard flashed again, red light spilling across the chrome. "System failure, imminent, 35 minutes. Clara looked up at Marcus, her breath shallow, her voice trembling. "What do we do now?" Marcus stepped forward, his tone calm and sure. Now he said, "We fix it." The red digits on the dashboard pulsed steadily. 35 minutes remaining. Clara's eyes flicked from the screen to Marcus. For the first time, her voice lost its edge. "How does someone like you end up homeless?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He was crouched by the car, his fingers tracing the edge of the damaged panel, as if feeling its pulse. When he finally looked up, his expression was steady, not defensive, just quiet. "False accusation," he said. "One bad report. They needed someone to blame, and I fit the description." Clara's brow furrowed. "But if you were innocent, why didn't they clear your name?" "They did." Marcus replied, his tone flat but calm. 2 years later. By then it didn't matter. The story was already out. People remember the headline, not the correction. He stood rubbing his palms together absently, as if trying to shake off the memory. That's how it works. The system's fast to punish and slow to forgive, especially when you're a black engineer with no money, no lawyer, and no one willing to vouch for you. Clara's throat tightened. She looked down, then back up at him. "You lost everything because of that. I lost the career," Marcus said. "Then the house. Then the friends." but not the knowledge. That's one thing they can't take. There was no bitterness in his tone, only fact clean and bare. The honesty hit her harder than she expected. She felt something twist inside her chest, the slow, quiet shame of realizing how easily she had judged him. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Marcus shook his head. "Don't be. You didn't build the system. You just believed in it." For a moment, the only sound was the engine struggling for air, each rattle growing louder, slower. Smoke curled upward, thick and blue-gray, exactly as he'd said it would. He turned toward the rear of the car. "There's an emergency toolkit in the back compartment. Bring it here." Clara blinked, caught off guard by the way he spoke, direct, steady, the tone of someone who expected to be obeyed. She hesitated, then moved quickly, opening the back panel and pulling out a sleek black case. She carried it over and handed it to him without a word. Marcus knelt, flipping it open. His eyes moved fast, scanning every slot. Sealant compound, thermal gloves, fiber pads. Good. He paused, his brow furrowing. "But I'll need graphite. Stettler Mars Lumograph, grade 8B. Clara frowned. "Pencils. You're serious? I wouldn't ask if I wasn't." Her assistant, still pale from earlier, spoke hesitantly. "I can get them. There's an art supply store across the street." Marcus nodded. "Go. Hurry." The assistant ran off, his footsteps echoing across the plaza. Clara stayed. She watched Marcus line the tools neatly on the pavement, each motion deliberate, almost surgical. His hands were steady, his breathing even. There was no hesitation in him anymore, just focus. Clara crossed her arms, voice quieter now. "You really think you can save it with that?" Marcus didn't look up. "I don't think," he said. "I know." He reached under the hood again, the light catching the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. "The crack's right here," he murmured, "where the secondary and tertiary loops meet. The pressure shift created a weak point. The alloy can't handle that kind of strain." Clara stepped closer, careful not to touch the car. "And you can fix it." With graphite, Marcus nodded. "If I mix the emergency sealant with fine graphite particles, it'll form a temporary molecular bond, strong enough to handle the pressure. The 8B grade has the right density, smooth enough to merge, hard enough to stabilize." She stared, half skeptical, half amazed. "So you're basically creating a new material out of a repair kit in pencil lead." He looked up at her. "Engineering isn't about what you have," he said. "It's about what you do with it." For once, Clara didn't have a comeback. She just watched him, this man she'd dismissed as irrelevant, now commanding the scene with quiet authority. A few people in the crowd had started filming again, drawn in by the tension and the strange unspoken respect forming between them. Marcus's attention didn't waver. He worked with precision, adjusting valves, clearing debris, inspecting the coolant line, as if he could see through the metal itself. Clara found herself studying his face, the small lines near his eyes, the calm concentration that made everything else fade away. She realized he wasn't fighting for recognition or money. He was fighting for the engine, for the act of fixing something that mattered. The assistant came running back, slightly out of breath, holding a small blue box. "Got them." Marcus stood, taking it carefully. "Good, thank you." He flipped the lid open, picked one pencil, and broke it cleanly in half. The crack of graphite echoed softly. Then he scraped the lead into a small vial of sealant, mixing it with controlled, practiced motions. Clara watched the process, unable to look away. The way he worked wasn't flashy. It was disciplined, exact, the rhythm of someone who'd built and rebuilt 1,000 systems before. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "You still talk like an engineer." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's because I still am one." The digital timer on the dashboard ticked down to 31 minutes. Marcus glanced at her once more. "This is going to work," he said, "but I need absolute focus. No distractions." Clara nodded, her voice almost a whisper. "You'll have it." She stepped back, watching as Marcus began the repair, the man she had once pushed away, now kneeling before the machine that held both their reputations in its hands. The hood rose with a low hiss that cut through the plaza's thick silence. Heat rolled out in waves, curling into the morning air. The smell of hot metal and chemical coolant clung to every breath. Marcus leaned in, face close to the engine, his reflection warped in the chrome. He didn't flinch. His hands were steady, his movements measured one clamp at a time, one valve after another. The sound of metal tools against alloy filled the empty space where no one else dared speak. Clara stood, close arms folded tight, more from tension than cold. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She could see beads of sweat slide down his temple and trace a dark line into the collar of his faded t-shirt. Her voice came out low. Pressure reading Marcus adjusted a small wrench, eyes locked on the gauge. Opening the valve now. He turned it with slow precision. A thin hiss of pressure escaped, followed by a faint shimmer of steam. He glanced at the gauge again, his jaw tight, then gave a small nod. "Holding at baseline, that's good." Clara let out a quiet breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "You move like you've done this 100 times, she said. "I have," Marcus replied, his voice even. "Just not since they took my clearance." Clara hesitated. The question left her mouth before she could stop it. Aerotech. He didn't look up. That's what they called it. He reached for a small vial, gave it a careful shake, and brushed the graphite sealant mixture over the exposed pipe. His hands worked with quiet discipline, slow, precise, without waste. Clara crouched slightly to see better. What really happened there? He kept working. A supervisor bypassed a safety lock to hit a deadline. I warned them it would fail. It failed. He tightened a bolt, straightened, and met her eyes. They needed someone to blame fast, someone below management, someone they could afford to lose. His tone didn't rise or harden. It was calm, but there was exhaustion behind every syllable, the kind that only came from being disbelieved for too long. "You were fired for warning them?" she asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. "No, I was fired for refusing to sign their lie." The words fell between them like a heavy tool. He turned back to the engine, tightening the last clamp and pressing down to test the seal. By the time the investigation cleared me, the story had already done the damage. No one hires a scandal, not even a false one. Clara watched him in silence. The car's faint mechanical hum began to stabilize, but her pulse didn't. "You still talk about it like you believe the system can be fixed," she said. "It's not about belief." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, then reached under the hood again. "It's about refusing to walk away from what's broken. Machines fail, people panic, systems crack. The job's always the same: fix what's in front of you." His tone was soft, almost kind, but there was something unshakable in it. Clara didn't answer. She watched his reflection in the metal surface, steady, focused, unshaken. For the first time in hours, she felt an unfamiliar calm settle in her chest. Then a sharp voice sliced through the moment. "Step away from the vehicle." Marcus froze mid-motion. His hand stayed resting on the valve. The voice came again, deeper, controlled. "Now." From the far end of the plaza, a tall man in a dark gray suit approached. His stride was firm, the kind that made space without needing permission. Two corporate security officers followed close behind their boots, echoing off the marble tiles. The sunlight caught his badge, Reynolds, Executive Security Director, Tech Horizon Industries. Clara blinked. "Reynolds, what are you doing here?" Reynolds stopped beside her, eyes sharp on Marcus. "I could ask you the same thing. I was monitoring the system feed when I saw an unauthorized access ping from your diagnostics. Then I arrived to find an unknown subject tampering with a restricted prototype." Clara opened her mouth, but Reynolds raised a hand. "Who is he?" Marcus straightened slowly. His gloves creaked as he removed them, placing them neatly on the ground beside the open kit. "Someone trying to keep your car from turning into $1 million bonfire." Reynolds' jaw shifted, unimpressed. "That's not an answer." He looked at one of the guards. "Run a visual ID." The guard lifted a small handheld scanner. Clara stepped forward, blocking the view. "Reynolds, stop. He's not a threat. His name is Marcus Johnson. He worked at Aerotech." Recognition flickered in Reynolds' eyes. "Marcus Johnson," he repeated slowly. "The same engineer who caused the coolant failure." Clara's tone sharpened. "He didn't cause it. That depends on which file you read." Reynolds said, voice level but cold. "Terminated for gross misconduct. Unauthorized system interference. And now he's here at a competing company, hands inside one of our most classified engines. You see how this looks?" Clara froze. Her mouth went dry. Marcus spoke before she could. "If I wanted to sabotage it, I would have let it fail." Reynolds took a step forward. "Or maybe you're making sure it fails on your terms." Slow, quiet, less suspicion. Marcus met his stare without blinking. "Or maybe I'm saving you from explaining to the board why your flagship exploded in the middle of the city." Reynolds' expression hardened, but a small twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed irritation. Clara stepped back. "Let my team handle this." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "Reynolds," he turned to her, tone firm. "You don't know this man. I do. You have a company to protect." Marcus exhaled quietly. "If you walk away, that engine's gone. The leak's building pressure again. 15 minutes before it hits critical temperature. After that, it's finished." Clara looked at him sharply. 15 minutes. He nodded once. "If I stop now, you lose everything." For a few long seconds, no one moved. The noise of the plaza faded to nothing but the faint whine of the quantum apex straining to stay alive. Reynolds's voice broke the silence. "We'll wait for the manufacturer's team." Marcus's hand tightened around his wrench, then relaxed. "Then you'd better call them fast," he said quietly, "because when this thing goes, it won't care who is right." The digital clock blinked. 15 minutes remaining. Reynolds moved closer, his polished shoes clicking against the marble. "Step away from the car, Mr. Johnson. You've done enough." Marcus didn't move. He looked at the gauge, watching the temperature climb by half a degree. "If I walk away, it fails in 14 minutes. Check the data yourself." Reynolds motioned to a guard. The man pulled out a tablet and synced it to the car's diagnostics feed. Numbers scrolled across the screen, red and climbing. The guard's face changed. "Sir." "He's right. The pressure curve's rising fast." Reynolds didn't answer immediately. He turned his head slightly toward Marcus. "How would you know that without access, no login, no clearance, no tools? Just information you shouldn't have." Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Because I designed the system this car was built on. The coolant flow ratios, the fail-safe limits, the alloy thresholds. I remember my own work." Reynolds gave a short, humorless laugh. "So now you're finishing what Aerotech started." "What Aerotech started was greed," Marcus said. "I tried to stop it." Clara stepped closer, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. "Reynolds, please. Look at him. Listen. He's telling the truth." Reynolds turned his gaze on her. "I'm not paid to judge sincerity. I'm paid to protect assets. Do you have any idea what happens if this man tampers with proprietary tech under your supervision? The lawsuit alone could bury you." Clara's throat tightened. "But if he's right, Reynolds interrupted, then the engine's faulty, and you approved it. Which would you rather?" explain to the board. The words landed like a slap. Clara looked away, her nails pressed into her palms until her knuckles went white. Marcus saw the change, the subtle shift in her eyes, from conviction to hesitation. He'd seen it before. He set the wrench down beside the toolkit. The small clink of metal on tile echoed like an ending. "You don't have to decide," he said quietly. "I already know your answer." Reynolds folded his arms. "Good. Then step back." Marcus straightened. No defiance, no anger, only calm. He removed his gloves, set them next to the wrench, and wiped his palms on the rag. Then he looked directly at Clara. "When that coolant hits critical temperature," he said evenly, "the tertiary loop will collapse. The core will overheat. You'll lose the entire system. Replacement time, minimum 3 months. Reynolds smirked. "You're bluffing." "I wish I was," Marcus said. He took a slow step back, giving them space. Around them, the crowd shifted, drawn to the tension, but afraid to speak. Phones were still raised, recording every second. Clara's eyes darted from the dashboard to Marcus. "Marcus, wait. You don't need me to convince you," he said softly. "The car will do that." The timer blinked again. 13 minutes. Reynolds turned away, muttering into his earpiece. "Dispatch containment. Locked down the plaza." Marcus stood still for a moment, the sound of his own breathing steady in his ears. He could feel the vibration change the way an engine's rhythm faltered when the stress line widened. He watched the hood shimmer in the heat, a distortion bending the city's skyline in the reflection. He looked at Clara one last time. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "Engines don't care about politics," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "They respond to care or neglect. You choose which one this is." Then he turned and began to walk. Clara's heart hammered. Every step he took away from the car felt wrong. She looked down at the display, the temperature spiking, the sound from under the hood deepening. Sweat beaded along her hairline. Reynolds barked an order to his team, but she barely heard him. The numbers flashed again. 12 minutes. 11. 10. Her breath quickened. Marcus wait. He stopped but didn't turn. Behind him, the quantum apex made a sharp metallic crack, the sound of something breaking under stress. Then came a deep, hollow rumble from the engine bay. The crowd gasped in unison. Clara froze, her body locking in place. Her eyes widened as the gauge needle shot into the red. Reynolds turned toward the car, his confidence cracking for the first time. What the hell? The hum turned into a roar. A sharp flash of smoke shot from the vent, curling in blue-gray spirals that filled the air like warning signals. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second, not in triumph, not in anger, in quiet resignation. He had warned them. The alarm blared so loud it shook the air. System failure imminent, 4 minutes to critical meltdown. Clara's heart stopped for a beat. Heat rolled off the quantum apex, the metal breathing hard, like a living thing in pain. The red glow from the dashboard painted her face in warning light. "Reynolds, it's going to blow," she shouted, but her voice sounded distant, almost swallowed by the rising pitch of the engine. The guards rushed forward, pushing the crowd back, but Clara didn't move. Her eyes locked on the car, on the faint shimmer of smoke that refused to die. Then she saw him. Marcus had stopped halfway across the plaza. For a brief moment, he didn't move. The chaos around him blurred, screaming voices, flashing lights, the whir of camera drones, and yet his expression was still focused, utterly calm. He turned and walked back through the haze. Each step seemed heavier than the last, but certain. The crowd parted wordlessly, as if some part of them already knew who would decide what happened next. Marcus knew Clara's voice cracked between fear and disbelief. He didn't answer. He crouched beside the hood, placed his hand flat on the hot metal. The surface trembled beneath his palm, wild and uneven, like a heart fighting to stay alive. 3 minutes, 40 seconds, he muttered under his breath. His eyes didn't leave the machine. "Get me manual override access." Reynolds barked, "You're not touching that car again." Marcus ignored him. His tone sharpened. "Clara now." Her breath caught. She hesitated for less than a second, then pressed the command. Manual override granted. The green light blinked alive. Marcus tore open the access panel. Steam burst out. He didn't flinch. His gloves hissed against the heat. Coolant pressures peaking. "We bleed it first." Clara knelt beside him, trembling sweat gathering at her temple. "Tell me what to do." "Auxiliary port B. Open it slow." She obeyed. A stream of liquid shimmered out silver and blue, swirling like liquid light under the sun. The smell of ozone and metal filled the air sharp enough to taste. The world around them fell silent. 50 people, maybe more, stood frozen, the only sound the hiss of pressure and the ticking clock. Marcus's voice stayed low and steady. "Pressure dropping. Good. Keep it there." He switched the feed, redirecting the recovered fluid into a canister. "We'll keep 60%. It'll hold." 2 minutes. Clara whispered, her throat dry. He didn't look up. "Then we make them count." The drained coolant hit the tray with a deep metallic sigh. Marcus grabbed the small sealed container from the kit, twisted it open, and began refilling the core with clean fluid. His hands moved in rhythm, deliberate and exact. "Come on," he murmured, watching the gauge. "Take it. Come back to me." The indicator flickered red-orange, then amber. Clara's breath shook. "It's holding." Marcus nodded once. "Good. Flow rate next." He leaned closer, adjusted the intake valve until the hum beneath the hood softened, less frantic, more human. "There," he said quietly. "That's equilibrium." 60 seconds, she said, barely breathing. Marcus didn't respond. He was listening not to her, not to the numbers, but to the rhythm of the engine. He adjusted the stabilizer bolts 3 quick turns, the kind of precision only muscle memory could achieve. "When I say so," he said, voice low, "start ignition." "Not before." "Understood." He glanced at the timer. 50 seconds. He gave one last adjustment to the coolant regulator. The hum settled into a deep, steady pulse. Marcus exhaled, slow, measured, then looked at her. "Now or never." Clara's hands hovered over the ignition pad. She met his eyes, steady, dark, certain. "Marcus, do it." She pressed the button. The quantum apex screamed. Metal ground against metal, a terrible sound, then silence. Clara's stomach dropped. "It's dead weight," Marcus whispered. A low vibration rumbled through the chassis, deep and uncertain. Then it grew a rising roar, rough at first, then strong, fuller, alive. The red lights on the dashboard faded one by one. Smoke thinned, lifted, disappeared. The engine's voice changed from chaos to rhythm, from panic to peace. Marcus stayed beside it, head bowed slightly as if listening to a heartbeat steadying itself after collapse. The hum was deep, even alive. Clara's breath trembled. The temperature, "It's dropping." Her eyes flicked to the screen. "Pressure's stable." Marcus nodded, once calm, but exhausted. "It's holding." Silence fell, not the silence of fear, but the kind that follows relief too big to name. Every red light turned amber, then green. The new message glowed across the display. System stabilized coolant flow, normal performance limited to 70%. Clara's knees almost gave out. She laughed once, a quiet, shaky sound that didn't feel real. 70%, she said. "That's what you said." Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve. "That's the safe limit. Don't push it." The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, the high ping of phone cameras, but their noise felt far away. For Clara, everything had narrowed to one image, Marcus standing in front of her, sweat streaked across his face, his gloves blackened with graphite and sealant. He looked utterly spent, but his eyes still burned with focus. You fixed it, she said softly. Marcus shook his head, voice low. It fixed itself once someone stopped getting in the way. Clara swallowed hard, her throat tight. You repaired a quantum cooling core in under 30 minutes with pencil lead and sealant. That's not repair, Marcus. That's something else. He gave a tired smile. It's not about what's possible. It's about what matters. Clara looked back at the readout. Steady green lines, the hum smooth and alive. She blinked, and for the first time all day she smiled. Behind them, Reynolds stood motionless, pale. You were lucky, he said, barely audible. Marcus met his gaze. No, he said simply. I was right. Reynolds had no answer. He stepped back, his authority shrinking into the background noise of celebration. Clara turned to Marcus again. Her voice was no longer sharp or commanding, only quiet respect. What you just did shouldn't have worked, but it did. Marcus nodded. That's all that matters. The engine purred softly behind them, calm, balanced, unbroken. The crowd began to cheer again, louder this time. But Clara didn't join in. She just stood there beside him, watching the blue-gray smoke vanish completely, the sunlight glinting off clean metal. For a long moment, neither of them said a word. Then Clara spoke almost to herself. You saved my company. Marcus looked at the glowing screen, then at her. You still have a meeting to make. She smiled faintly through the exhaustion. You were right about everything. Marcus's answer was quiet, steady. That's my job. The quantum apex stood still behind them, the engine quiet and steady again. The chaos was over, but the air still carried the smell of burnt metal. Clara turned to Marcus, her voice low but firm. I want you to come with me, she said, to Nexus headquarters. Right now. Marcus frowned. Why, I have a board meeting in 90 minutes, she explained. They'll want answers, and you're the only one who has them. He looked down at himself, the faded t-shirt, the old jeans, the scuffed sneakers. His hands were still darkened with graphite. You want me to walk into your investor meeting like this? Clara didn't blink. You do today. Marcus gave a small laugh, more weary than amused. You know what happens when someone like me walks into a room like that. She met his eyes calmly. Then we'll change what they see. He tilted his head slightly. You mean my clothes? I mean everything that keeps them from hearing you, she said. You fixed what no one else could. Let me handle the rest. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fine. But don't make me look like a puppet. Her lips curved into a brief smile. I wouldn't dare. She turned to her assistant. Call Langford Atelier. Full fitting at HQ in 35 minutes. Charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. The assistant hesitated. That's fast. Tell them it's for me, Clara replied. Marcus rubbed his palms, wiping away a trace of sealant. You really think a suit changes anything? It changes who gets the chance to speak, she said simply. He nodded. Fair enough. She motioned toward the car. Come on. He lifted his grocery bag. You're sure about this, I'm sure, she said. You're coming with me. The ride to Nexus headquarters was quiet. The city rolled past glass towers, streetlights flickering in the afternoon haze. After a few minutes, Marcus said softly, Your car runs smoother now. Clara's eyes stayed on the road. It should. You rebuilt it. He smiled faintly. Still runs better than its owner. That earned the smallest laugh from her, brief but real. The silence returned until Clara asked, When was the last time you were in a boardroom? 3 years ago, he said. At Aerotech. She glanced at him. What happened? He looked out the window. I warned management about a cooling flaw in one of the early shuttle prototypes. They ignored it to meet a deadline. The test overheated. No one died, but they needed someone to blame. My name was on the report. Her voice softened. You were cleared later, right? Yes, he said. 2 years later. But the damage was done. People remember the headline, not the correction. She didn't respond, and the silence between them turned heavy. Marcus finally added, After that, I stopped fighting. Fixed small things. Helped in shelters. Read manuals to keep my mind working. That's what you do when the world forgets you. You keep learning. When they reached Nexus headquarters, security opened the gate without question. The tower rose ahead, all glass and silver, under the fading light. 2 employees waited by the door, beside a thin man holding a black case marked Langford Atelier. Clara got out first. They're setting up a fitting room inside, she said. Marcus followed her, squinting at the tall building. Looks expensive. It is, she said. But it breaks like everything else if you stop paying attention. Inside, the air was cool and clean. People turned to watch as Clara walked through the lobby. Some nodded politely. Others looked at Marcus with quiet curiosity. Her assistant noticed and stepped a little closer as if to shield her. In the elevator, their reflections stood side by side in the mirrored wall, Clara sharp in her white suit, and Marcus in his worn clothes. He gave a half smile and asked, "You really want me standing next to you like this?" Clara didn't look away. "No," she said. "You'll stand next to me as yourself. The clothes just clear the noise." Upstairs, a team of tailors was already waiting, calm, efficient, professional. Racks of suits lined the wall. Mr. Johnson, the fitter, said politely, "We'll take your measurements." Marcus sighed, lifting his arms. "You're sure this isn't for a photo op?" Clara shook her head. "Just making sure no one mistakes you for maintenance." He gave a faint grin. "Fair enough." The tailors worked quickly, shoulders, sleeves, waist, without a wasted word. "Matte charcoal," the fitter said. "Standard lapel approved," Clara said. When Marcus tried on the test jacket, the assistant whispered, "He looks like a different man already." Marcus adjusted the cuff. "That's the trick, isn't it?" Clara replied quietly. "No. The trick is remembering you were always the same man." The fitter nodded. "We'll finish the suit in 15 minutes. As they waited, the assistant looked at Marcus again. "You really designed that cooling system." He met her gaze evenly. "I still do." She hesitated. "It's just, you don't look like an engineer." He smiled faintly. "Exactly." Clara shot her a sharp look, but Marcus's calm tone made it unnecessary. When the final suit arrived, Marcus put it on. The fit was perfect. Simple, precise, clean. Clara circled once, checking the details. "That'll do," she said. Marcus looked at his reflection. "People treat you differently when the fabric changes." "Then use that difference," Clara said. "Make them listen." He nodded. "They'll listen maybe not because of what I say, but because of who they think I am." She met his eyes. "Then show them who you really are before they forget again." The assistant checked her watch. "Meeting in 10 minutes." Clara gave a quick nod. "Get the slides ready." When the room emptied, Marcus took one last look in the mirror. The man staring back looked sharper, stronger, but still himself. He reached for his grocery bag, but Clara stopped him gently. "Leave it," she said. "It'll be safe here." He hesitated, then set it down. The locker door clicked shut. Clara adjusted her jacket, her voice steady. "Once we walk in, I'll deal with the noise, the politics, the questions. You stay on the facts." Marcus gave a quiet nod. "I know what I'm here for." They walked side by side down the hallway. Their footsteps echoed across the floor, calm and even. At the end, the glass doors to the boardroom stood open, sunlight spilling across the marble. Marcus paused to fix his cuff. "Clothes can open doors," he said softly, "but what we say inside decides if they stay open." Clara met his eyes. "Then make sure they don't close." He gave a small nod. "That's the plan." The glass doors eased apart on a soft motor hum. Clara stepped in first, chin-level, shoulders set. Marcus followed half a pace behind, adjusting his cuff with 2 fingers to keep his hand steady. The boardroom air was cool, filtered, and still. A long oval table of glass and brushed steel ran the length of the room. Sunlight slid across it in slow bands. 12 investors were already seated, notebooks opened, pens aligned, faces calm, practiced unreadable. At the far end sat Evelyn Shaw, the chairwoman, with a closed folder and an open stare that measured without showing it. Clara did not waste time. "Thank you for coming on short notice." Her voice carried without effort. She tapped her tablet. The display behind her lit up with the title in clean letters, Quantum Coolant Stability Internal Review. This morning, she said, our Quantum Apex prototype suffered a major systems fault. We contained it. You will see the full diagnostics and the method we use to prevent a complete failure. The next slide time-stamped images from the plaza. Blue-gray smoke, temperature lines climbing, coolant pressure dropping, the hum of a quiet projector. Pens started moving. A throat cleared near the middle seats. Someone clicked a pen open, then shut. At 9:14, Clara said, "We lost cooling pressure." At 9:17, the system reached instability. At 9:52, the core was stabilized with performance limited to 70%. "We have preserved the engine for validation." A silver-haired man leaned toward his mic. "You said repaired." "By whom?" Clara turned slightly to her right. "By Marcus Johnson," she said, steady. "The original designer of the cooling framework our vehicle is built upon." Chairs shifted. 2 investors glanced at each other. One whispered not as low as he meant to Aerotech. Another voice came sharper. "Miss Wright, are you confirming you brought the engineer from the Aerotech coolant incident into headquarters?" Clara looked him in the eye. "I brought in the engineer who prevented a public explosion and a lost quarter." A thin man near the middle pushed his glasses up. "The Aerotech file describes gross misconduct and unauthorized protocol interference." Marcus spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet and even. "The file describes a conclusion that protected a schedule. It does not describe the truth." The room stilled. A few pens lifted off paper. Clara's eyes slid to Marcus for half a beat, then back to the table. Marcus kept his hands folded at his waist. I refused to approve a test plan that bypassed a failsafe. The test failed. They needed a single name for it. I became that name. He drew a breath, not dramatic, just steady. 2 years later, an audit cleared me. By then, the headlines had done what headlines do. No one rushed to answer. A low hum from the air system filled the pause. At the near left, Sophia Reyes, Chief Technology Officer, rested her forearms on the table. She did not look at Clara. She looked only at Marcus. Her posture was straight, her voice relaxed. Say what you did today. Not the story. The work. Marcus nodded once. Secondary loop developed a hairline fracture at the junction with the tertiary chamber. Alloy fatigue under microvibration at sustained heat. Sensors treated the drift as noise. Pressure rose. Failure became inevitable. He lifted his chin toward the screen. I bled. The system filtered what we could save, mixed the emergency sealant with fine graphite from 8B pencils to stabilize the bond and allow controlled flex under heat. Then recalibrated flow and brought the engine to a safe ceiling at 70%. A man in a Navy suit let out a short breath that sounded like a laugh. Pencils. Sophia did not smile. Graphite, she said. Particle size does the job if you know how to use it. Her eyes returned to Marcus. Why 8B density and smoothness, he said. It blends clean and holds under load. 6B would shear. 10B smears. Sophia sat back thinking. That tracks. Clara stepped in. You will see the data no one is guessing at. She tapped her tablet. The display changed to the engine schematic. The fractured junction glowed on the model. Mr. Johnson walked them through the failure chain and the fix. Marcus took one step closer to the screen. He kept his arms loose at his sides. The problem is not the coolant recipe. It is the joint. The alloy is too rigid where the loops meet. Microvibration at high heat fatigues the joint. A crack forms, pressure vents, and the heat shield shows the smoke you all saw. He pointed to a narrow ring on the diagram. Replace this with a flex-stabilized insert. Widen the tertiary buffer by 0.2 millimeters. Reweight the filter so it does not discard the early signal as noise. Run the thermal simulation with the loop interactions combined, not isolated. The Zurich investor, a calm man with careful diction, asked. Projected gain, endurance, up by 34%, Marcus said. Thermal strain down by half. Same hardware envelope. The silver-haired investor watched Marcus's face, not the screen. You calculated those in your head. I carried the ratios for years, Marcus said. The numbers are the same body. The context changed. A few seats down, a younger partner tapped 2 fingers on his notebook, then stopped. The rhythm of the room had shifted. Doubt was still present, but it no longer led. Evelyn lifted her folder slightly, but did not open it. Longevity of the field repair. 3 weeks under hard testing. 6 under standard use, Marcus said. The point of today is not the patch. The point is the path. Sophia's mouth pressed into a small, unguarded smile. That is clear. She leaned toward the table mic. For the record, improvised molecular stabilization in the field is rare and difficult. He pulled it off while the core was counting down. An older investor who had kept silent so far cleared his throat. Mr. Johnson, if you had been wrong, we would be sitting here without a flagship and with a plaza full of video. Marcus looked at him. Yes. What made you do it anyway? He paused, his jaw set before he answered. Because the engine was going to fail in front of me. I knew how to stop it. Choosing to do nothing would have been a kind of lie. No one spoke for a few seconds. The air felt colder, but the silence carried weight, not judgment. Clara let that settle, then moved the meeting forward. You have the logs and flow curves. You can see the bleed pattern, the filtration, the refill. The control limits are documented. We will confirm with lab testing, then raise the cap once the new joint is installed. The Navy suit investor tried again. Miss Wright, you took a legal risk allowing an outsider into that system. Clara faced him. He is not an outsider to this system. His work built it. I took a larger risk when I ignored him in the plaza. Near the center, a woman with a soft Georgia accent spoke for the first time. What about the Aerotech stain? Her hands were folded fingers tight enough to show color in the knuckles. My clients will ask. Evelyn looked to Clara, then to Marcus, giving space. Marcus did not look down. I will sign whatever release you want to see. You will find an internal memo calling out a bypass on a failsafe and my refusal to approve it. You will find an audit clearing me 2 years later. You will not find the headline that cleared my name above the fold. He kept his tone even. If you decide that is disqualifying, say so. I will not argue it in this room." Sophia's eyes softened for the first time. Clara's shoulders moved with a slow breath she did not quite let out. The Zurich investor nodded once as if filing a decision. "Let us return to the work." Clara advanced the slide to a table of steps and timelines. Validation in 2 weeks. Full integration in 4. We will run combined simulations, then a thermal stress series at graded intervals. Documentation will include the field method as an appendix for training. She turned her head a fraction. "Marcus, add what I missed. Update the filter coefficients," he said. "Do not let them bury the early signal again." He looked at Sophia. "Your analytics team will want the raw traces. I kept my notes." He touched the small notebook in his jacket. "It is all written. Ratios, margin, sequence." Sophia held his glance and gave a single nod. "I will have my team ready." A hand lifted from the far end. A quiet investor with a scar along his jaw cleared his voice. "Before we talk commitments, there is the matter of trust. Miss Wright, why should we believe this is not a one-off save?" Clara did not answer right away. She looked down the table and then at Marcus. "Because the way he thinks scales," she said. "You do not build a company on luck. You build it on people who see what others miss and who move when it counts." The scar jaw investor pressed. "And you intend to give him access to our labs?" "Yes," Clara said. Several eyes shifted. One man frowned. Another wrote a note, underlined it, then stopped writing. Evelyn folded her hands. "I have heard the facts. I would like to hear the risks spoken plainly." Sophia spoke first. "Risk 1, we validate too slowly and lose momentum. Risk 2, we validate too fast and carry a blind spot from the old test model. Risk 3, we allow politics to choose hardware." Marcus added, "Risk 4, we keep treating early signal as noise because it is inconvenient." The Georgia accent woman let out a small sigh she tried to hide. "That last one sounds familiar." Evelyn's brow raised almost a sign of humor, then settled. "Mitigations," Clara answered. "Schedule with teeth on both sides. Independent review on the code filters. Full cross-simulation. Public reporting to this board on progress and failures. We put the work in the open, not in a prize drawer." The Zurich investor tapped his tablet once. "Funding implications, short-term cost up," Clara said. "Long-term rework down." She looked to Marcus. "Give them the ratio." "Spend 1 to save 10, Marcus said. "You save the quarter and the next one." The scar-jaw investor leaned back. "If we approve the plan and the numbers hold, we will revisit the scale of our commitment. If they do not, we step back. That is the sensible course." Sophia looked to Evelyn. Evelyn gave a small nod. "I agree." Clara inclined her head. "Then we move forward." The room eased a degree. Pens started again. Lids clicked. Someone coughed into a sleeve. The worst of the storm had passed, but a test still lay ahead. Evelyn lifted her folder and finally opened it. One more item. Leadership. She looked to Clara. Clara did not look away. "Mr. Johnson has been a contractor for 10 minutes and a problem solver for much longer. I would like to invite him to join Nexus." She slowed her pace a fraction, not for effect, but for clarity. Not as a consultant, as chief technical officer, full creative control of engineering. The table did not move. Even the air system sounded quieter. Sophia's mouth curved. "He would have my full support." The silver-haired investor who had first pressed on Aerotech watched Marcus carefully. Mr. Johnson Marcus did not rush to fill the silence. He looked at the screen, still showing clean green curves. He looked at Clara. He spread his fingers on the glass table for a second and then eased them away, as if checking that they were steady. "That is a generous offer," he said. "It honors the work." He drew a slow breath through his nose. "I have learned to be careful with titles. Titles can become cages if you forget the purpose." A few low smiles, not mocking, moved around the table. Evelyn said, "You do not need to answer today." Clara's voice dropped half a step. "Think about it. We will talk after the verification run." Marcus nodded once. "Understood." The Georgia accent investor added softer than before. "If you are what this data says you are, people like, you do not get a door like this often. Take the time, but do not take too long." Marcus met her eyes. "I hear you." The meeting began to break apart. Chairs slid back, papers stacked, side conversations sparked and died. Sophia stood and crossed to Marcus without hurry. She offered her hand. "I read your papers when I was a junior engineer," she said. "Today explains why they stayed in my head." Marcus shook her hand. Her grip was warm and firm. "Thank you." Sophia's voice dropped low enough for only him and Clara to catch. "We do not get many chances to rebuild a test culture. If you join, I will clear space for that work." He nodded. "If I join, I will hold you to that." "I expect you to," she said, and stepped away. Evelyn closed the distance next. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "credibility is a currency. Today you earned some. Protect it." She did not wait for a reply. She was already moving to the door. Two investors lingered. One approached Marcus and spoke in a practical tone. "If you publish the field method after validation, our partners will want it. Think licensing. It could be significant." Marcus gave a small nod. "One problem at a time." The man accepted that and moved on. The room emptied. The projector fan slowed. The light on the screen softened to a dim glow. Only Clara and Marcus remained. Clara stood a step away, hands at her sides, not hiding the small shake she forced out of her fingers. She let it go, then looked up at him. "You kept your voice level when they pushed you." "Anger does not move numbers," he said. "You could have fought harder on Aerotech," she said, not as a challenge, more as a thought. "I did," he answered, "not loud enough for the headline." She took that in. Her eyes cleared. "You have not answered me." "I will," he said, "after we prove the fix in the lab." "A beat." She nodded. "Fair." He slid his notebook from his jacket, turned a page with his thumb, and wrote 3 lines in quick block letters. He spoke while he wrote. "Combined sim plan, filter change, sequence for the bleed and refill training. Your team needs the order written down." "I will put ops on it," she said. "Walk me through the timing." "Validation starts tomorrow," he said. "I want an early morning slot. Cooler ambient helps for the first run. 2 passes, 1 at standard heat, 1 at elevated. If the curves hold, we green light the insert prototype. If they drift, we correct before lunch." Clara's mouth lifted a fraction. "You just scheduled my day." "You asked for numbers," he said. A soft knock at the door. Clara's assistant stepped in. She kept her voice low. "Verification lab can take you at 8. I blocked your calendar." Clara nodded. "Thank you." The assistant glanced at Marcus and hesitated. "Do you need anything else, Mr. Johnson? Coffee," he said. He almost smiled. "Black." "Got it," she said, and slipped out. Silence again. Not awkward, just full. Clara looked at the display where a single line still showed in green stability first, then speed. She turned back to him. "Is that your rule or your shield?" "It is how I walk," he said. She held his eyes. "Then walk with me tomorrow." He looked toward the door where the investors had filed out, then back to her. He nodded once. "Tomorrow." They moved toward the exit together. The hallway beyond was bright and cool. Their steps matched without effort. At the threshold, Marcus paused and glanced back at the empty room, the dim screen, the long table, the chairs pushed in with care. Clara noticed. "What is it?" "Nothing," he said. "Just remembering the last time I left a boardroom." "How did that one end?" "With a door closing," he said. She held his gaze a second longer. "Let us keep this one open." He did not answer with words. He set his hand on the door and held it for her. She stepped through. He followed. They walked down the hall, side by side, neither hurrying. The sound of their footsteps was even and calm. His breathing had leveled. Her shoulders had dropped an inch. At the elevator, Clara pressed the call button. The light beside it blinked once. She looked at him. "You will sleep at all tonight, I do not know," he said. "Maybe a little. You can use a guest room on the executive floor," she said. "It is quiet." "I have a place," he said. "It is not much, but it is mine." She did not push. "Then I will see you at 8. He nodded. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in and faced him as they began to close. "Marcus, yes. If you change your mind about the title, I will ask again. If you do not, I will ask again anyway." A small line formed at the corner of his mouth that might have been a smile. "I believe you." The doors closed. Marcus stood for a moment with his hands in his pockets. He drew a long, steady breath. He turned and walked back the way they had come, past the meeting rooms, past the framed photos of product launches, past a glass wall that showed a slice of the city far below. He reached the small locker where he had left his worn grocery bag. He opened it, lifted the bag out, and set it on the bench. Inside were the same things he carried every day: a folded tarp, a screwdriver wrapped in cloth, and the stack of hand-sketched diagrams that never left his side. He smoothed the top page with his palm. The paper was creased, but the lines were clean. Ratios, arrows, notes in block letters. He closed the bag and zipped it. He stood there a second longer, exhaled, and nodded to himself. Then he headed for the stairs instead of the elevator. He took each step at an even pace, hand on the rail, eyes forward. The building was quiet at that hour. Night staff passed by with polite nods. He returned them with a small lift of his chin. Outside, the evening air sat cool against his face. He looked up once at the tower of glass and steel, then down at his hands. The graphite stains had faded, but not gone. He adjusted the strap of the bag on his shoulder. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from a number he did not know. It was short 8 o'clock. Lab 3. We will be ready. SR. He typed a reply, 7:45. I will bring coffee. He put the phone away. Traffic moved on the street in calm lines. He started walking, the rhythm of his steps, settled and sure. He did not feel triumphant. He felt responsible. Behind him in the boardroom on the top floor, the projector cooled to silence. On the screen, the last line of his analysis still glowed in faint green. The next morning, the lab lights glowed pale against the glass walls. Marcus stood over the console sleeves, rolled up a cup of black coffee half empty beside him. His notebook lay open on the table, pages filled edge to edge, in clean block letters, ratios, notes, sketches, and one simple heading in bold pen Talent Recovery Initiative. Clara entered quietly. She had traded her white suit for something simpler, a gray blazer, no jewelry, hair pulled back. The shift was subtle, but deliberate. This was not the CEO walking in. This was the woman who had spent the night reading every line of his notes. Marcus didn't turn. He spoke without looking up. You've read them. I have, she said softly. Twice. He looked up then, and Clara moved closer, her heels silent on the tile. It's not just a plan. It's a manifesto. He smiled faintly. It's a start. She set her tablet on the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed. You want to build a center outside the system where people like you, like the ones who fell through it, can work again. People who were brilliant once and just disappeared. Marcus nodded. They didn't disappear. They were discarded. His tone wasn't angry, just factual, the way an engineer might describe a broken circuit. The world doesn't have a shortage of intelligence, Clara. It has a shortage of access. The ones who get erased, former researchers, developers, engineers, they're still out there. They're driving cabs, fixing HVAC units, sleeping in shelters. People like me. He turned another page in his notebook, revealing a rough sketch of a modular workspace. All they need is a lab, a stable income, and someone who believes the equation isn't finished just because they fell off the page. Clara's voice lowered. You've been thinking about this for a long time. 3 years, Marcus said. Every night since Aerotech. He traced a finger along the diagram. I kept writing down names. People I met at shelters, community centers, bus stops, men and women who used to work in science, healthcare, engineering. Some of them built the systems we use today. Then one bad break, one bad rumor, and they were done. Forgotten. He flipped another page. This one was labeled Innovation Center Phase 1. It showed columns of data projections costs, but also handwritten notes that read, no suits, no walls, no politics. I want you to be part of it, he said finally. Nexus can fund it. You can open the doors. I can build the foundation. Together we can make something that gives people back what the world took from them. Clara stared at the page. The ink was smudged where his thumb had brushed it, imperfect, human, real. She let the silence breathe for a moment before she spoke. You're not angry, are you? Marcus shook his head slowly. No, anger doesn't rebuild anything. What I want isn't revenge, it's repair. The words hung in the air, quiet but heavy. Clara lifted her gaze to his, and for the first time since they met, there was no barrier left between them. No title, no defense. Just two people who had both seen what the system could destroy, standing there with the chance to build something new. She drew a deep breath and let it out slowly. You realize what you're asking me to do? Yes, he said. I'm asking you to do what's right, not what's easy. Clara gave a small, incredulous laugh. You know you're impossible to say no to. Marcus allowed himself a grin. I've heard that before. She studied him for a long moment, then reached out her hand. It trembled just slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what it meant. Then let's start. Partners. Marcus looked at her hand, strong, confident, steady, and then at her face. Partners, he said. Their handshake lingered. It wasn't just agreement, it was understanding. Outside the glass, the city lights began to flicker on, one by one, as dusk spread across the skyline. The reflection of the two of them shimmered faintly in the window, two silhouettes framed by light, by possibility. Clara looked back at him, her voice steady but soft. You just turned a breakdown into a blueprint. Marcus smiled, eyes warm but grounded. That's what I do. They stood there in quiet recognition, two people who had both lost faith in the world's fairness, now deciding to build something better from the wreckage. Clara's expression softened. Let's give the world one more reason to listen. Marcus nodded once. Then let's get to work. The elevator chimed softly behind them. They turned toward it, walking side by side. The door opened, spilling warm light across the lab floor. As they stepped inside, Clara glanced at him, half smiling. "You know this isn't going to be easy." Marcus adjusted his sleeve. "If it were easy, it wouldn't be worth doing." The doors closed on their reflections, not two people chasing redemption, but two builders walking towards something harder, quieter, and far more human, rebuilding what had been forgotten.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.